First one was found right here. Then we got Martha Bess Young, Kim Little, Darla Ferguson, Julie Angel. We're looking at all of them as a serial.
Tonight on 48 Hours.
The killings took place in the execution style.
The hunt for America's most terrifying criminals.
5 killings of 5 students.
People who murder again and again because they like to.
I didn't want to stop. I didn't want to get caught.
He was basically a textbook child serial murderer.
At that time, I became a hunter and a killer. That's all I was. That's what was in my mind.
Why did you murder my daughter and all the other girls that you did this to? Why?
Families in ruins.
That was the only daughter I had.
Communities in fear.
Whenever they get into a car, that could be their last trip.
And the law in desperate pursuit. Serial killer.
What kind of a person would really do something like this?
More than 21,000 Americans are murdered each year. Often the killer is someone the victim knows, a spouse, a lover, a business associate. Other people die during the commission of a different crime, a robbery, a shootout. But the most horrifying deaths come at the hands of serial murderers, people who actually enjoy making other people suffer and die. As you're about to see, these criminals are hard to catch, difficult to convict, and almost impossible to comprehend. Come along with us on the trail of the serial killer, a crime against humanity, a race against time.
In better days, the town of Lake Elsinore, California was as quiet as it still looks.
Those books are the homicide books on the women that have been killed.
But today, this is not a peaceful place.
And we have other books, too, that are in these file cabinets that are locked.
Today, there is a serial killer on the loose.
I think there was 4 prostitutes that have been killed. We've got 8 now. The Riverside Police Department has 3.
Bob Creed and John Davis are homicide detectives with the Riverside County Sheriff's Department.
We're looking at all of them as a serial.
They are tracking the serial killer who they believe has murdered 12 women since 1988. Most were prostitutes. 8 of the victims were from Lake Elsinore.
The first one was found right here. That was Linda Ann Ortega. And then we got Martha Bess Young, Diane Talavera, Kim Little, Christina Leal, Kathleen Millen, Darla Ferguson, Julie Angel.
My stepdaughter was bludgeoned to death, and her body was dumped nude.
Bob Chapman's stepdaughter, Judy, also known as Julie Angel, was found murdered November 11th, 1989.
Well, this girl was beaten so bad that they wouldn't even let us see her body.
Judy would never stay very far away from me. Never.
Julie's mother, Kathy Chapman.
Judy went out about 11:30, and she met some guy across the street, real tall, thin guy, and she never came back.
Julie was victim number 5.
She was a good girl. She wasn't always in trouble, just in the last few years.
But Judy came from a good home. She was not trash. My daughter was not trash.
This is the scene of the first one. She was found down in Embankment. 3 days later, Martha Young was located. She was found right at the top of that hill. You can see the area where 2 of the other girls were located. That's Julie Angel and Kathy Millen. Just on the other side of that hill is where 2 others were found. We feel pretty sure that 7 of the victims were not killed exactly where they were found laying. They may have been killed in a car and then taken to the spot and left, or they could have been killed in somebody's home, loaded up into a car and taken there.
You guys really don't know very much at all about what happened in these cases yet.
No, it's pretty baffling in some respects.
There is some evidence which the police don't want to discuss that links all of the killings, and there have been dozens of other leads.
You wouldn't believe the calls from wives and girlfriends that are calling up saying that they think that their husband or boyfriend is the killer.
But Creed and Davis believe their best hope of catching the killer comes from the women who are the potential targets.
We know that you're an active prostitute in the area, and we're not here to hassle you on that. Okay, what we're hoping for is information. We're talking to all the girls. It's probably somebody that they all know or that have been with at least the vast majority, I would think.
Has anybody been violent at all?
No. I think when we finally identify this person, a lot of these girls will know him. You guys are watching out for each other? Watching the cars?
Yes, we are.
I know what people say up here.
What do they say? What have you heard?
Oh, well, we don't have a killer up here. We have a health nut.
They say that about the man who killed your daughter?
Oh, yeah.
Health nut?
Oh, yeah. He's cleaning up the trash in downtown Elsinore.
How do you answer that?
He may go through the same thing. He may have children that do.
A serial killing is different than a normal homicide. Usually with most murders, there's a relationship between the victim and the suspect, and there's a motive. With a serial killing, you don't have that. The targets are someone that has been identified by this person as someone that they want to kill. The suspect may watch him for a day or two, and see what their habits are, whether he has anger towards women or relates back to his mother or some other female in his life, or whatever his motive is. He targets these people because of that. And that's what we have to find out why. And that's what's really difficult. Maybe he was their John for 1 or 2 times before, or maybe it's someone that presented himself as a stable person. Maybe it's someone in a business suit or drives a nice car.
Are you afraid
Yeah.
out here? Yeah? What do you know about what's going on?
What about 8 girls have been killed?
Lisa is a 20-year-old prostitute in Lake Elsinore.
Why do you keep doing it?
For the money. I usually stay with people I know, don't get in cars with people that are that, I don't know really.
What if whoever's doing this is one of your customers, though?
Oh, I doubt it. They're all mostly married and have kids and everything. I really doubt it.
There's about 15 or 16 girls that we can identify right now as far as being prostitutes in the area. And when you look at that and you see that we have 8 that have been murdered, it's not a business or a risk that I would want to take. The odds certainly aren't in their favor. And they realize that. That's the sad part, that they realize that these people are potential victims. And that any time whenever they get into a car, that could be their last trip.
I will fight it. I'm going to continue to fight this thing till I find out who this man is. Not just for my daughter, but all of these girls.
Later in our 48 hours, how the Chapmans are taking on the killer.
We're trying.
When I was 12, 13 years old, I remember stepping on a large snail up in the mountains and cracking its shell. And that really upset me. I'd hurt this little tiny animal. And then a few years later, I'm killing children. I became completely obsessed with it. I liked what I was doing. I wanted to keep doing it. I didn't want to stop. I didn't want to get caught.
In November 1989, Wesley Allen Dodd was caught attempting to abduct a child. He later confessed to the serial killings of 3 young boys in Washington.
He said, okay, there's just one more thing I want you to do. One of the boys said, what? I'm not sure which one. I reached down, pulled the knife out real quick and stabbed Billy. Got him, I think, in the stomach. I'm not real sure.
How would you describe yourself?
Child molester, rapist, and killer.
You are your actions. There's nothing else in there?
It became so much part of me there wasn't room for anything else.
Dodd had a long history of arrests for exposing himself and molesting children.
How did it progress from molestation to murder?
I was afraid of going back to jail again. I still needed to go out in West. I didn't want the kid to be able to report it, or give a description or anything, because I knew I'd go back to jail. So I started thinking that I would have to kill to keep him quiet. And the killing part in my mind became as exciting as the molesting was.
He was basically a textbook child serial murderer.
Dr. Ronald Turco, a psychiatrist and a police officer, interviewed Dodd as he confessed.
He was typical?
Yes. Run-of-the-mill psychopathic killer. An inadequate man, a nobody, a coward, somebody without skills, psychologically inept, incapable of loving, and deep down inside, hostile and selfish. We used to call them cardboard people.
Never really any kind of social life, never had many friends or anybody, so there's really not many people that I had to hide it from. I went to work, I did my job, and I went home.
But you were obsessed with the thoughts of rape and murder, yet you were able to function, you were able to go to work, you were able to talk to people at work.
Right. Even after I had finally killed my first two victims, Tuesday morning I was able to go to work and do my job.
These were his first two victims, 11-year-old Cole and 10-year-old Billy Neer. He molested and murdered them in this park in Vancouver, Washington.
I started looking for places where there might be kids playing alone. With the Neer boys, I just walked up to them. I had decided that I was going to kill that day. At times I felt a little bad about it. And I just tried to block that out of my mind. But then suddenly I realized I'm thinking about killing again. Just all of a sudden I'm thinking about that. And it pushes away any of the bad feelings I may have had.
You see, the emptiness that people like this feel generates anxiety. They then commit a murder that gives them a release for a small period of time, and then they commit another murder. That helps them to relieve the anxiety.
At that time, I became a hunter and a killer. That's all I was. That's what was in my mind.
After 2 months of methodical planning and stalking children in local schoolyards, he murdered again.
9 o'clock, went to schoolyard. 12 o'clock, ate lunch. 1 o'clock, back to the schoolyard.
You know, keeping these detailed records, that's, again, what these people do. It's part of their production.
Police found this diary hidden under Dodd's bed. Keeping a journal is another trademark of most serial killers.
There's a repetitive description of ways in which to murder people. The fastest you see is stabbing, and then there's starvation, bleeding someone to death, suffocation, drowning, and so on. So he's basically a master at murder.
I read some of the parts of that diary, and they were pornographic, sadistic, pretty disgusting.
Yeah, just writing it was exciting to me. Just writing the stuff down, writing down my fantasies was exciting. By the time I started writing that diary, I just become completely obsessed with killing.
4-year-old Lee Isley was Dodd's next victim. He held him for 18 hours before he killed him.
I kept trying to be his friend the whole time, even though I was molesting him, raping him. He was a real nice little boy.
You're talking about someone you brutally murdered.
Yeah.
And you're saying he was a nice little boy.
Got off work, got home a little bit after 4 o'clock. Took Lee's body out of the closet, laid him on the bed. He was stiff, cold, purple. I took a couple pictures of him laying on the bed.
I don't understand how I can love kids so much and yet do all that I've done to them.
Is there any way to break the cycle?
No.
Serial killers are lost causes.
Lost causes. Prison. The devastation in terms of their character is just too great. There's no treatment.
Dodd is now in Washington State Penitentiary on death row.
I really don't think this state has a choice. I have to be executed. They can't take a chance of me ever being back on the streets.
Ken Bianchi under hypnosis. His cousin, Angelo Bruno, one of the Hillside Stranglers. Charles Manson, the quintessential serial killer. Henry Lee Lucas, this guy is a killing machine. He will kill and feel absolutely no remorse about it. Ed Gein, he made lampshades out of skin. He had body parts all around his house. He is the inspiration for the movie Psycho, for the movie Silence of the Lambs.
For 11 years now, Northeastern University criminologist Jamie Foxx has focused on serial killers.
It's a professional obsession. It's taken a long time to understand what goes on in the mind of a serial killer.
General boarding of USA Flight 11.
But for Professor Foxx, it's not just theory, it's practice. He's heading for Gainesville and the University of Florida, where serial murder is anything but academic.
Well, you can imagine the terror in Gainesville, which is normally a pretty sleepy town. 5 killings of 5 students in Gainesville, Florida, in such a short period of time would indicate that that we have a real problem.
Lee Strope is lead investigator for the state.
This is Williamsburg apartment complex. This is where we had our first homicides.
It was here 17-year-old Christina Powell and 18-year-old Sonia Larson were found murdered, their bodies mutilated and displayed in a way investigators still won't describe. Hours later, 18-year-old Krista Hoyt was found dead in her apartment. She had been decapitated, her head displayed on a bookshelf. And 24 hours after that,
more than 40 lawmen cordoned off the Gatorwood apartment complex on Archer
2 more
Road.
murders.
Inside a back apartment, there is the body of a man and a woman.
24-year-old Manny Taboda and 23-year-old Tracy Paulas. Her body was also displayed, and she had been raped.
You know what happened, you know where it happened, you know when it happened. You just can't figure out why it happened, and that's why we have people like Dr. Fox.
Homicide Task Force order.
Serial killers are the cream of the crop. If a guy is not clever, is not skillful at killing and getting away with it, he won't remain on the street long enough to become a multiple murderer.
There were so many killings in one short period of time. Isn't that really unusual?
Yeah. On a scale of viciousness, we're talking about someone at the far end of the spectrum. Someone who can kill in a brutal way and not satisfy his urge for murder.
An extreme case, one that triggered panic, and the largest investigation in Gainesville history.
I'm leaving. My parents are coming to get me, and I'm going home.
We're talking about an entire city, community, and state that went into a frenzy.
Serial killers, by the process of killing repeatedly, become comfortable with murder. And the more comfortable they become with murder, the more grotesque, the more sadistic they get.
There have been news reports that the killer may have taken parts of the body with him or her. What does that mean?
Serial killers are very much driven by their fantasies. Oftentimes they're sexual fantasies. And oftentimes they will use souvenirs as items to reminisce about a crime. Carol was...
And whoever he is, and experts like Jamie Foxx say he is most likely a male, he is on their minds day and night. Is there a typical serial killer?
White male in his 30s, who is extraordinarily ordinary in appearance. These guys have an insatiable thirst for power, for domination, for control. They enjoy playing God and deciding who will live and who will die.
I mean, there are any number of men who could probably fit that category. So how does this help you in your investigation?
I think that it could be construed as maybe an educated guess, but a well-educated guess, which is maybe far and above what the average officer does as far as serial killings are concerned.
Do you fear as a law enforcement officer that you're going to see more of these?
I think there'll be a lot more people that we classify as serial killers in the years to come.
Does that scare you?
Yeah. Yes. Just about all of us have children the same age as these kids were. That was still.
We have 5 victims. The impact of their death
reached out throughout this community. We have a personal obligation to see this to a conclusion.
Police aren't the only ones who need Jamie Foxx's assistance.
Oh,
good to see you.
Oh, same here. Oh, God, thank you for me.
Next stop, Miami, where the parents of murder victim Tracy Paulus also need some answers.
What kind of things do you need to know?
I don't know what we need to know at this point in time. There's something we don't want to know a lot of things.
I'd like to know a little bit more about what kind of a person would really do something like this. I mean, Jesus Christ, this isn't a person, it's an animal, or it's a thing, you know, it isn't a human being.
To know her is to love her. She didn't have any enemies. She made friends with everybody. She took care of her friends.
She loved to learn. She hungered for knowledge.
Why would somebody hurt her? She's an athlete. She was loved by everyone. A gifted child, a scholar. She was going to attend law school.
Going through the house, knowing that Tracy's presence isn't here anymore.
She was homecoming queen?
Homecoming queen for American High School.
And that someone took her life for no reason whatsoever.
She didn't make it. But she would have. She had the world by the tail.
Do you feel a need to get this investigation over?
Absolutely, absolutely. It will calm us. I mean, we'll know that that person is where he belongs, or it belongs.
There'll never be a rest. Tracy will always be a part of us.
It's been 9 months, and for all that is known about the killer, the most important fact is still missing: a name. Police have several suspects in mind, but no one has been charged with the Gainesville murders.
We all know what night this is. We have extra patrol out there, and we have some extra detectives on duty.
A serial killer is loose in Sacramento, California tonight.
One of our main concerns is if something does go down.
Someone who kills just for the fun of it.
If medical attention is needed, we're going to have to do that. If you guys got any questions.
Police are going out to search for someone who kills execution style.
That could be his psychological motive, that he wants to gain attention. He wants to make a statement. He wants to put this community on edge.
We're getting a lot of calls tonight. Sacramento County is nervous, so they're calling us on everything that might be suspicious.
Police call him a thrill killer. On Tuesday night, 2 weeks ago, he killed 3 people. Last Tuesday, 3 more.
917A. It's across the street from the Del Taco, a male subject.
And it's Tuesday again. But with almost no leads, Chief of Homicide, Ray Biondi, is making a direct plea to the killer.
Have we misunderstood your actions? Was there something about these people that threatened you? Do you need help? Are you enjoying killing people? If not, let us help you stop.
And what about the killer himself? Is that a difficult thing when you have so little information about this person you're searching for? So many people who are potential suspects, I suppose.
Well, we're looking for a shadow, and that we still don't even know the race of the person.
I don't know where the gun is. We've got shells on the ground.
The killing started here.
It was a quick stop market in a small convenience store. Someone went in there, killed both clerks, and also killed the customer just at the front door. The killings took place in the execution style, and they were all headshots. This last week, less than a mile away at a Round Table Pizza, someone again went in, herded the 3 employees of this pizza parlor to the back of the business, and executed all 3. We're dealing with somebody who likes to kill.
Now, on the 3rd Tuesday since the killing started, all Sacramento is braced and watchful. Will the thrill killer kill again?
How's it going?
Is it quiet in there tonight?
Yeah, off and on. It's like we're not sure whether we're going to have customers or not. They're all scared to death that something's going to happen and they don't want to come in after dark.
Are you going to close down at your regular time tonight?
No, we're not. We're going to close down a little bit earlier.
Okay. About what time?
What has it done to this neighborhood?
They won't go out at night. Even men are bringing their clothes in the daytime. So it is scary.
People don't want to be the potential victim, so they're being cautious and staying out of the stores tonight.
This is gruesome. And it's a full moon, notice?
In the barber shop, Carlos Holguin keeps a sturdy pick handle beside his chair.
It's better than not having anything, I'll tell you that. Might makes right sometimes. You know, I hate to, but it's the way it is.
The only thing you can do is take necessary precautions. Excuse me, man, I gotta talk to these guys out here.
A security guard posted at the scene of the first 3 killings has spotted a suspicious car across the street.
It's left once in the last hour. It's just sitting there, okay?
Okay. I have a possible suspect vehicle with license plate number.
Turns out the suspicious car doesn't belong to a killer.
Yeah, a couple cops. Just keep it to yourself.
But to 2 undercover policemen.
I hope the guy, like Lieutenant Boundy said today, that the guy will give up, turn himself in. I would like to see it. Simply for the sake of all the other people out here that are working in fear.
For Lieutenant Biondi on Wednesday morning, there is both relief and disappointment. The Tuesday night thrill killer did not kill again. But the police are no closer to catching him.
Serial killer, thrill killer. We haven't changed our opinion on that. Based on the 2 events, we still feel he's a person who kills because he likes to.
Do you think he'll kill again?
Our experience is he will.
How would you describe yourself?
Quiet, friendly. I work hard. I'm really not any different than anybody else.
Except that Elmer Wayne Henley is a serial killer. A serial killer who says he's reformed.
If a junkie can quit being a junkie, why can't I quit being what I was?
18 years ago, police were called to this house in a suburb of Houston on what they thought was a routine homicide. What they found was the bullet-ridden body of Dean Carl and a crying 17-year-old named Elmer Wayne Henley. Carl had been Henley's friend and mentor, and by killing him, Henley put an end to a 2-year torture and serial killing spree.
Hello?
Mama.
Who's this?
It's Wayne.
Yes, this is Mama, baby.
Mama?
Huh?
I killed Dean.
Oh, God.
The articles in the house itself, you know, the board with the handcuffs and the tools they had used for the torture, I knew that was not a run-of-the-mill, everyday shooting.
Detective David Mulliken was the lead investigator.
I'm with the police, Mama.
Henley led the police through several killing fields where he and Carl had disposed of their victims.
It started right here at this boat shed. Right over in that corner, there was a mound dirt that was just mounted up just a little bit. That's where the first body was. They wrapped all the bodies in plastic, so some of the bodies were still intact. Some of them, of course, had been there a couple of years, so they were just skeletal remains. We wound up with 17 bodies out of there.
The final body count, though, was 27. They were buried in several locations.
These were the notes that I took in my office just prior to him giving the written confession. Johnny DeLone, shot by Wayne. Choke, choke, choke. Shot in the head by Wayne.
The victims were all boys or young men. Henley confessed to killing 6 of them.
Now this was his confession. I killed several of them myself with Dean's gun and helped him choke some others.
Henley claims he had been under the spell of Dean Carl. Carl was a 33-year-old bachelor who worked at the local power company. His neighbors described him as quiet and friendly.
When I got involved with Dean Carl, it was like going through the looking glass. You know, nothing was real, nothing was right. I was living in a madman's world.
Were you a madman?
No.
You're a sane man in a madman's world?
Mm-hmm. I was a boy in a madman's world. It was a weird mesh of conflicting feelings because I was scared of him and I thought he was sick, but at the same time I didn't want to displease him. I wanted to please him. I wanted him, to be proud of me.
I shot Charles in the head with Dean's pistol. Then Marty Jones, me and Dean choked him and buried him in the boat stall.
Do you see yourself as a victim?
Of Coral. Instead of picked to be killed, I was picked to be a handyman.
You make it out to be you're a victim of a serial killer, but if you look at the record, you're a serial killer.
I'm not.
You're not a serial killer?
I'm not a serial killer.
We killed a boy by the name of Billy Lawrence. I don't remember how we killed him, but we buried him up at Dean's place. And that's pretty bad when you kill so many, you don't remember how you killed them.
You're saying you're not a serial killer now, but yet you've serially killed.
Oh, well, yeah, that's semantics. Without Coral, there wasn't a crime. On my own, there would have been no crime. It's not me. I'm passive.
I think he came to enjoy that power of either giving life or taking it away.
Elmer Wayne Hanley pleaded guilty and was sentenced to life in prison. He's now 34 years old, in jail for almost 18 years, and he is eligible for parole.
I do believe that I could function out there, that I could have a positive influence. I don't want to be no psychopath. I don't want to be no killer. I just want to be decent people.
And you think you're capable of that?
Yes. I know I'm capable of that.
Who's to say when you got out there again that there wouldn't be something else that would latch onto that part of you that
I'm
made you
a grown
want to
man
kill?
now, in control of myself and my emotions.
But so far, even though Henley has been a model prisoner, the parole board is not convinced. All of his requests have been denied.
I shot and killed Johnny DeLone. We choked Mark Scott and Frank Aguirre. The last one I can remember, their name is Homer Garcia. And I shot him in the head and we buried him at Rayburn.
I want the jury to realize that he is a serial killer. He's a deviant.
Roger Kibbe, on trial in South Lake Tahoe, California.
People are ready, Your Honor.
Prosecutor Robert Drossel must now prove
that he left a path of destruction on the roadways he traveled and created not only havoc for these victims, obviously causing their death, but also havoc for their families, which they'll have to live with for the rest of their lives.
What would I say to Roger Kibbe? Why did you murder my daughter? And why did you kill her and leave her in a ditch? And all the other girls that you did this to. Why?
Kibbe is called the I-5 killer because most of his alleged victims were found in isolated areas, sometimes hundreds of miles apart off California's Interstate 5.
And we can start with Laura Heedick, who's a prostitute. Stephanie Brown, her vehicle broke down on I-5 area. Charmaine Sabra, who was again a young woman whose vehicle broke down on I-5. Darcy Frackenpaw, young prostitute.
But it's been a long road from I-5 to the courthouse.
Did you know Steffi Brown?
She's my daughter. It'll be 5 years since Stephanie was murdered. 5 years. And of watching other girls being murdered, of them rehashing things, of them showing body bags, of them showing girls coming out of ditches, of them showing all of this stuff, and you relive it every time you relive it.
5 years and as many as 7 murders. A desperate hunt for the killer and for enough evidence to try to convict him.
The problem we have is, are they related or not? Are they linked?
Sacramento homicide detective Ray Biondi spearheaded the case.
Okay, this is the criteria we used to determine if we thought the cases were linked.
The victim is transported.
Some distance. There's evidence of binding, of cutting of clothing, taken from a major road highway. The body was concealed, or it's a rural deposit, partial nudity. It's still so very hard to recognize a serial murder. recognizing that you have other cases, linking those cases together.
I'd like you to focus in on the events that occurred the last time you saw your daughter, Charmaine. Would you do that?
Carmen Anselmi testified that Roger Kibbe offered help when she and her daughter Charmaine had a car breakdown on I-5.
He says, well, I could drive you back, but I had to take one at a time, and I didn't think nothing of it because the car was small, and I believed him. I said, you go first, and I'll stay here, and you get some help. But I never seen my daughter again.
Like the others, Charmaine Sabra was strangled.
That's a piece of wood, and we had testimony, for example, from the pathologist that that stick, or garrote, could be used to, for example, crank, turn it, tighten and tighten and tighten until somebody finally dies from strangulation, lack of air.
Even when investigators didn't know the killer's name, they knew the kind of man they were looking for.
My personal feeling is that maybe it started in his childhood, but he has a problem with women, obviously. He has a hatred for women.
How did you start building your list of suspects?
We did that with, from the public plea and from other police agencies sending us information, going through our own files. It got so big so quick that we took all this material to the Department of Justice and they put it in a computer. We drew up some criteria so we could put these suspects in priority. And out of these several hundreds of suspects, Roger Kibbe serviced on top.
He had a criminal record.
He had a criminal record.
Police went to Kibbe's house, hoping to break the case.
Did you ask him what activity he had with prostitutes?
Yes, I did.
And what was his response?
He said that he would go make contact with the prostitutes. However, he had never been with a prostitute and never spent money on a prostitute.
Police found absolutely no evidence linking Kibbe to any of the murders until September 1987.
He grabbed my hair and smashed my face into the console.
He had picked up then-prostitute Deborah Guffey and taken her to an isolated parking lot.
When he smashed my face down, he told me, don't struggle and you won't get hurt. I said, sir, please. And as I came up, I turned and hit him.
All right. And where did you hit him?
In the face. I just feared for my life. So I was just going to fight until I couldn't fight no more.
I heard a woman screaming.
By an amazing stroke of luck, police were on the scene.
And when my headlights hit that car, the female on the passenger side was sort of propelled backwards out and away from the car.
And did you pursue that vehicle?
Yes, sir.
And he arrested Roger Kibbe.
And Kibbe, as he was fleeing from the scene of the assault, left a trail of evidence. We have in this, what I call the crime kit, a scissor. We have a vibrator, which is sometimes used as a sexual tool.
What about this cord? You've referred to him at times as the cordage killer.
The cordage is the evidence, in my mind, the significant evidence that I think is going to hammer him.
The cord tied up the case. Similar rope had been found at the murder site of prostitute Darcy Frackenpole, and it also turned up in a search of Roger Kibbe's workplace.
These 3 pieces of cordage at some time were exposed to a similar environment.
Forensic expert Faye Springer examined the cord.
There was particles that were similar in all 3 cases.
What were the particles?
Well, the main probative particle was some red paint that was on all of the cordages.
So you're sitting there and you find this stuff. What goes through your mind? You think, we've got him?
I hug my microscope and I say, hey, great, this is good evidence.
Good enough to indict Roger Kibbe for the murder of Darcy Frackenpole. But the prosecution is also introducing evidence that links Kibbe to at least 3 other murders. Defense attorney Philip Cohn says that's not fair.
It's our contention that's highly prejudicial, that the jury has a very difficult time isolating one instance, and that, again, the emotional appeal where there's 4 victims out there is overwhelming, even though he's only charged with 1.
The problem is that Kibbe has no alibis, will not take the stand.
He has a stutter, he's not very articulate, and that is a very difficult problem because people perceive him as this absolute animal.
Police insist that 52-year-old Roger Kibbe is a savage killer. and not only of the women found along I-5.
It's my opinion he did a lot more murders than we ever found, and that there are years that we cannot account for what he was doing. Where does a man at his late age start?
On March 18th, Roger Kibbe was convicted of the murder of Darcy Frackenpole.
You know, we can see some similarities where, you know, she's usually always at this corner at this time, or that's her usual corner.
Detectives Bob Creed and John Davis continue their search for the serial killer in Lake Elsinore, California.
The last time we can place them before their death, so, or at least a pretty rough period. We need to set up some appointments. We're going to try and contact Julie Angel's family.
The Chapmans.
The Chapmans. Hi, this is Bob Creed. There's some things that we'd like to come out and take a look or look at. Hey, Mr. Chapman.
They are collecting items from the victims' families for scientific tests.
This is Ruth Duncan. She's our forensic technician. I want to be able to solve all these. Not just to get the person behind bars, which is the ultimate goal, but also for the families. Because they can't put it to rest until you get this solved and find out who did it and why they did it.
Bob and Kathy Chapman lost their daughter, Julie Angel, a little more than a year ago.
How would you like her to be remembered?
That she was my daughter and that she was a good person. She was a good person. She never was mean to anybody.
Frustrated with the lack of clues and suspects, Bob Chapman is taking matters into his own hands.
I'm not going to give up. I will follow that man. If I get so old I can't do nothing but crawl up to him and spit on him. But I'm going to do it. I am going to do it.
And you've started your own investigation.
Yes, I did.
You've been to the scene?
Yes, I have.
Could you take us there?
Yes, I can. I go out looking for anything. Something that was missed, something that the sheriff's department missed. This is I-15 interstate, right up here. And all along this corridor, so and within 25, 50 feet of this area, that's where they've been picking up these bodies. But my daughter was found approximately right along in here.
Just to the side of the road?
Yeah,
Not
just the
even
side of the road.
tried
No, she wasn't even hit or anything. So the day workers were coming by and they saw this body. That morning, my wife had gotten up to go to work and was up here on the interstate, and her daughter was laying here, murdered.
Didn't even look like her. There wasn't much they could do with her. I mean, to make her look good. Her face was caved in on this side, and there's a hole right here. The police even said she put up quite a struggle. I can't imagine what she would have been thinking, except maybe she would have wished she'd listened to me.
And done what?
And not prostituted or used drugs.
After Julie's murder, Bob Chapman moved into a downtown motel for 6 weeks, trying to find out what happened the night his stepdaughter was killed.
Yeah, this is the Hans.
You moved in here?
I moved in here.
You're a retired security guard.
That's right.
Chasing a serial killer.
That's right.
Isn't it dangerous to do that?
Sure, it's dangerous. But what am I going to do?
Let the police handle it.
Let me help the police as much as I can. I may find one little tiny piece and give it to the police department, let them take it from there. I will not get in their way.
You haven't yet, though. You haven't found anything to give.
Nothing. Absolutely nothing.
Aren't you frustrated?
Sure, it's frustrating. It's frustrating as hell. But I can't give up. I owe that much to my daughter. I can't give up. That was my heart. And these people just don't know what they did when they did that to my daughter. That was my heart. You're not gonna talk to me. Someplace somebody saw a car or saw a truck, any little thing. This is what we need, and this is what the police department needs.
You think you're going to catch this guy?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Sure?
Yeah.
You've been at this, what, almost 3 years?
Yeah, it'd be 3 years, but I will find him. He'll make a mistake somewhere or do something that will lead us to him.
I can't let it rest now. I can't accept that she was murdered till somebody gets caught for doing it. I mean, that was the only daughter I had.
Bob Chapman's search continues. His daughter's killer has not yet been found. But in Gainesville, late word that police believe they now know the identity of the killer of Tracy Paulus and the other Florida students. Authorities aren't saying who the suspect is, but say he is under arrest on another charge. They add that there may be an accomplice involved. As for Roger Kibbe, believed to be the I-5 killer, he's scheduled to be sentenced Friday. I'm Dan Rather. That's 48 hours for this week. Coming up, your late local news. But first, a look ahead to our next report. They don't just believe in miracles, they make them. You hear that?
People make miracles happen.
Helping Hands.
You're giving them something that they could never, ever imagine would have happened.
Turning heartbreak into hope.
Do you think that Osmond Walcott will see again?
I think it's possible.
Miracle workers.
All of a sudden, this kid has a new life.
Next week.
Looking for mystery, suspense? Start at the scene of the crime. It's Crime Time after prime time tonight. Thanks for watching CBS. Now get ready for your local news. For a transcript of 48 hours, send $4 to Journal Graphics, 267 Broadway, New York, New York, 10007. And to purchase a VHS cassette of today's broadcast, call 1-800-338-4847.